ready for takeoff.
Okay, I'd like to start so we all have enough time later. Hopefully, I can make it to the questions. So let's go ahead. This is the talk, Never Again Without a Contract. Dry schema and dry validation. Because the title didn't fit, so I had to put just dry validation on the program, but that's okay. Who am I? Everybody has a big deal on saying who am I, how good you are. I'm the top one of rejected Ruby talks and conference according to speakerline.io. Okay? Yeah! I dare you to go ahead of me, but on accepted. Open source contributor since 2000s. My code is in your MacBooks somehow because I've been doing contributions to Ruby core. It's little on the standard library, but not a big deal. My sponsors, I'm gonna thank you for the Jane Foundation donation, who gives me $1, which make it possible. I'm here with all of you. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you. I really appreciate your foundation is going to be bigger and better than not the Ruby Central. Okay, I work for a company called AnyRoad as a staff software engineer and technical lead. I don't know exactly what it means, but it means that I'm old. I know some stuff here and there after 20 years of being in this industry. So let's go. Did I say my name? No, I didn't. My name is Espartaco Palma, but I go by Sparta everywhere. ESPARTA. And we can meet me on Ruby Social. Please join if you ever. This is the agenda. We're going to have the intro, the what, the why, the who, and conclusions. Okay? Bear with me. It's going to be a lot of things to see, but we're going to make it. A little anecdotal time. In my first paid job, I was exploited. It was, but I learned a lot. It makes any consolations. I was paid in cash every 10 days. Don't ask me why. At some point, I got chickenpox. I reported myself as sick. Told me it's okay, come back whenever you feel ready. Yeah, you know what happened, right? When I got better, I went back to that job. I was told I have no job anymore. I said, oh my God. Okay, thank you. That's when I said, never again without a contract. And that's from that day. I was 19 years old. And that happened a lot of times. So I tried to go ahead. Not never again, but I tried. It was never, but we try. Okay. Let's go. What about the schemas thing? It's very much as JSON schema, but better. If you're not, I don't want to spend too much time. You can Google this, but you're going to try to get into the point at some moment. Since Ruby can be used, since it's pure Ruby, can be used on any Ruby data structure, including JSONs. It's more focused on structures, on types, structural validation, pre-coercion, using filters, introspection with rule and ASTs. It's very performant, it's fast, it's working a lot of composition and reuse. Has a nice DSL, including sanitation, coercion, type checking. Can be used on object orientation fashion, but it has a functional programming approach. So yes, including monads. It has been told that if you mention monad, you have to go to the definition of monads. I'm gonna try to go directly to there. Okay, also, monads is X is just a monoid on the category of endor functions of X with product a replacement of composition of endor functions and unit set and identity endor function. Got it? It's not my definition. It's right there, the answer in Stack Overflow. Okay? Are you with me yet? Okay. Nobody's leaving, right? Okay. Hopefully nobody. Okay. Nobody's leaving or whatever it is. Anyone have seen this? Have you ever seen this? Later you can Google it because we don't have time. It's the rhetoric carburetor. For me, the first time I read it, because it's too many math in there. But maybe if I say in Spanish, it's better for you. You can understand better, right? Because the math doesn't make sense. Let's say in Spanish. I have a few Spanish speakers here that can be with me. Go ahead. ¿Cuál es la monad? Es el artefacto que evita que se 4P la cuchufleta de la chafaldrana del modo que el tira el eco ya no de compresor. Is it better? No? No? Any better? What you're saying? No. I mean, this is clear. You didn't get the math, but you get the Spanish. You have been eating tacos all this time. No? Okay. Don't worry. We're going to get there. Let's talk a little about contracts, or we mean with dry contracts. At some point, schemas are not enough to contain what we mean to do. The next natural step is create contracts whenever rules and conditions may apply. It's like anything in your life, because you don't have to do a contract for literally everything. Like, I'm going to do a contract with my wife. Oh, wait a minute, I did. Yeah, I married her. Any other example, but you know what I mean. You don't have to do a contract every single time, but as long as we get agree on something in the state structure, and what is in the structure, we are kind of fine. You don't have to do a contract on every single thing you're doing. So that's why the never again with a contract is kind of lie, but I had to do something to be accepted. You know what I mean? So, on these conferences. It's a joke, sorry. Bad joke. I love Ruby Central. Contracts. Dryvalidation incluye the definition of the schemas, power for dry schemas, including macros, dependency injection, and rules. I cannot compress everything in this presentation because only 30 minutes, but we'll try to do super fast on what we can do. Okay, if you are still here, you may be asking why. Right? So like, I didn't hear about that. But most frequently than ever, our system starts to grow, to scale, to get more complex communication on internal and external agents. So it means it's not all about forms getting into your controller. It's nested, assign attributes or whatnot. It's not about that. I mean, at some point, you're going to grow. And sadly, you have to don't trust whoever send you a payload to your controller. I'm not saying everybody is bad, but everybody is bad in internet, so don't trust, especially if it's an API, even if they have a security on authentication, non-trust. The schemas and contracts may play a role to define what are acceptable inputs for our systems. Acceptables at that point. It's not exactly the main focus, but system security is implicit here. You're gonna let go in a lot of things that may hurt your system. There is a lot of layers where they can be stopped, but at the end, at some point, it's going to go into your application. So we're going to try to do it. It's not security focused. I may have some about that later, but not right now. Second, and when I was pitching this talk with you, but say, oh, active mode is enough. Yes, it is. If your company is a blog, you wrote in 30 minutes. Maybe some don't get that famous presentation of doing a blog of 30 minutes with Rails. But your company is not a blog you did in 30 minutes. Hopefully. If it is, it's time for me. Jokes apart, you're okay. If active mode has been enough, if your data has never been that complex, that's okay. You don't have to change every single time. Strong parameters is enough. Again, yes, it is. If you need to apply rules, you need to have corrections, or nothing that this kind of thing that you care about. It's just fine. But at some point, you're going to need it and like it, hopefully. Ryan Big, my benefactor and sponsor, recently wrote this. You can go to ryanbig.com, and it will be there on the blog post, which saves me about 10 minutes of this talk. Thank you for that presentation. Thank you, Ryan, again. If you see Ryan, I recommend Andres, recommend this book. Oh, whoop, no, this book. He changed the name. Somehow it was not very acceptable doing that. Why is all about boundaries? Web projects is a good practice. I'm not air quoting here to leverage in the schemas and contexts so the bad, wrong, unneeded data don't cross the barrier and goes farther than it should go beyond the controller. That's what I mean. Again, it's all about schemas. It's not just for web. It's basically every boundary you need to be sure you may, or may not, we never know, have bad consequences. Okay, let's see the how. Let's take a use case. Your company needs to connect with other using a standard or the other way around. For the sake of this, use something open. Let's try auto.travel. It's like this. And let's say the most basic endpoint you can have. This is the one of, on your server, you have a product and you pass along the ID. And that's it. It's the most basic thing. We're going to try to get there. You're supposed to create this for them. It's going to hit you on a GET request. And this is the most basic thing you can have. Because our business says our products are all UUIDs, not any kind of IDs. It's not can be like a 400 characters string. It must be an ID. You can do that. You say is required. That is fill as UUID. And don't mind too much about the name. Right now it's base model. We try to get there again. Again, this is kind of how we do. Don't take too much attention here because it's the base model, which is this. You create a product just to have a name, which makes sense. And we are done. That's how you define that whenever this input, which is a hash, must be this way. We had a lot of tests here in order to be sure that nothing cross along. And then you use it. That line 15, that's where you use it. I'm using here an API, Hamani API, so it doesn't have to be Rails again. And that's when we use this class I just created. Well, this is not a class, it's an object. And I pass along the parameter coming from the web framework. I don't care that much. It's parameter like any other parameter or any other web framework. And then you convert to monads. Wait, bear with me. And then do pattern match, which is kind of the cherry on top. What can we do with this is I barely did nothing but define the schema, right? And it's kind of plain English because now you say on the monads, in case you have a failure, set the status on 400 and return a JSON. I just do the curl because why not? Do the hit to this endpoint and return me just like that. I didn't did that. The framework, the tool itself, give me that. Go back, there's nothing. Just like that. And you have the validation because I pass along at 12, which comes along with a string, which means like an integer, but doesn't get into there because it's not what I was expecting. Even you hit me with this thing, if you send me 4 kilobytes of payload on ID, I don't care. Reject you because you don't comply with my requirements. Second, if the results of the monad is a success, return the JSON. Note, please, the constructed value right there, JSON ID, column ID. That came from the success. Okay? So again, I did nothing but define the schema. When I convert to monad, it's right there. I pass along, it's cut it off, but it's a UUID, and I returning exactly what I meant. You see, JSON ID, JSON ID. Are you still with me? See, monad is not that difficult. It's just figuring out how I meant to create a structure. The tool is that good that you have to do nothing but define the structure. Okay, let's go something more complicated. It's the same website. Now the payload is this. Product ID, it's option ID, local sets data star, blah, 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 blah. And they have a definition exactly what they meant, exactly the format. And there is on the last part of the right, the units, which says, if you see, there's something that says require, and whatever is not say require means it's optional. But inside these units, it says is required again. So how so? What it means, if you send this field called units, inside this field, which is an array, they must be an ID type string, and they must be a quantity the type integer. Both conditions should be applied. As you see on the left, I define everything exactly like how it is. Required, optional, units, array of units. Just this thing about this array with units pay all the learning. I dare you to try this on Aptic model. They have this kind of validation inside and inside and inside, because I didn't define it's not that long, because inside I define in the units, which is, guess what? Another schema. Is there. It's a schema that says I require quantity and I require ID. It doesn't matter documentation. If you see, there's something called parent, which is based on the base model. Remember the base model? That's what it is. I defined before, because it's my business, I know the IDs are all UUIDs. So I defined it before, I do a lot of tests about that, and then I reuse it as composition. That's the composition part. So I don't have to test it again. I just test again this quantity, because about the ID, it's already tested. It's done. Now it's going to be an exercise. It's not about that, but imagine you recreate a change of the product endpoint, the same we have. But now I require to have local date start, local date end, which one rule? Both are optional, but if you require it, both must be present. And the start should be before the end, so it makes a lot of sense. So that's when schema doesn't fit. because the schema is about the structure and what is inside your structure and what the types and whatnot. But it's not about rules. So let's go deeper. This goes when you see it. We're gonna create a contract. And I said it's gonna have params. Inside the params means it's gonna be a schema product, the same one I defined, which is the same one as a base model. And then another schema, which is the optional local dates. This is a new one. I'm gonna pass along to that. This is a new one. When I said it's optional, local date start and local date end, it needs to be a JSON date. I can explain that later, but this the date is kind of date. It's gonna be coerced. That's the part of coercion. Because they pass along a string, I'm gonna treat as a date and convert to a date type whenever this schema is applied. Again, it's validation, this is a contract, which the schema is a params with product and local date. That's the schema up here, the documentation I did. And then I define the rules. The rules is first, if you supply local date start, please also send the local date end, because I can do nothing on this. This is just my contract. It doesn't have to be that way. You can do it whatever you want on your rules. But my rule is you send me over the local date start, which is a JSON date, then send me the other way around. Second rule, if you supply local date end, then send me the local date start. It makes sense. And the third rule, if you send both, then create it. You see the key failure? It says the key part, because it's kind of the blocks in Ruby. This rule, if you break it, I'm gonna break the contract. I mean, you're gonna break the contract. Say, you multiply, okay, that's the message. You multiply local date start. And the other one is, it must be local. So I'm gonna try it again. And now, I'm gonna use it. This is the same endpoint I had. Now, instead of the schema, I'm gonna use the same, but now as a contract. And I pass along another parameters, because this contract needs the information, the input. And now this is new. We say, in case it's a success, and this success has local date start and local date end as part of the transformation, then to the JSON and call this process data with dates. It doesn't matter about that. It's just do something with that. I'm deconstructing this value, which is different than the other. So the other one is still working. I'm just adding a contract and I'm adding a constraint on saying what is happening. Again, I'm trying to send data with the same ID with the local start date. If I don't supply it, it says you must supply local date. The other way around, you don't supply, you must supply local date start. And if your date doesn't fit on, this is before the other, say, local date end must be after local date. That's it. In plain English, you define your rules, and everything is done. Of course, you have to test. Don't forget to test. Don't trust not either the main developers. Test it anyway, right? If you are good, you're sending everything, I will, remember I was a serializer. The serializer did that with the input, which was a date, you see, 2022, 11/29, and the other one, I transformed to Unix timestamp. That's what I did. You can do, of course, whatever you want with that. But that's just the most simple example I had in order to make it see. So it's not difficult monads once you get what it means. It's just a kind of transformation of data around to end on functions, but not. It's easier now. 5, conclusions. RubyConf is great to have as the first boundary between your system and other micro or external systems. It's also a great way to create and simplify your concept of your boundaries. You don't have to change all your active model, form, object, and mission manual. I'm not here to say that. You can continue. You can move around whenever fit your needs. But again, it's all about boundaries. All this is on this repo. So it's complete with 149 test assertions, which runs on 0.5 milliseconds, all of them, right? But I told you about boundaries, right? It's not about extract the uh, the structure, I mean, the schemas and contracts from that. You can go ahead and do something like that. This repo is using this structure. The schemas is in one folder with their own Git directory, which runs their own test. Inside, I mean, that's their own, it's called business, the folder. I create another application which is using Hamani API, which consumes the base schema contracts, as you see in the code, and which are mounted on a main application on Roda using that. Like it seems like a weird, it doesn't. Why? Because your contract is going to change constantly. So what I did for this repo is the first one is a gem, which you can version. So whatever your client is using all contracts, they can keep using whatever they want. You can construct new contracts and use another applications to do the same. It's like that. Remember the business contract product, just using that. But the same API is also a gem, which I mount on business API new. This is you can check it out, the repo. It's kind of complex, but it's boundary. I have my contracts in their own repo. It's a mono repo, actually. It's not separate repo. It's the same Git project. These not separate projects, but all of them have their own structure. It's separate. Like we don't have to match each other. I don't have to test database on my schemas. It makes no sense. But I can test the web on the API. I mean, the request on the API level, which should be slower than the other ones. But you can see. I'm going to thank you, of course. There's a lot of people in there, but the main developers of these libraries are Nikita, Peter, and Tim Riley. Please a round of applause for them because they are doing a lot of work. If you haven't heard about dry-RB, you may have heard about Hanami recently, right? But a lot of things on Hamani are on top of dry-RB. So I'm very thankful about all the work they have done. If you were curious about all these illustrations, this is what I get. It's called Lilliput Lyrics. It's circa 19th century. It's kind of weird. Like, okay, I'm gonna use it. They are free. I mean, their authors are dead long. Thank you to the British Library. I was able to get it for free. I had to pay no royalty, I guess. That's it. Thank you.